Hello and welcome to another very special episode of the Sales Ops Demystified podcast. Today, we're joined by Adam Ecevedo, who is a sales operations manager at Tableau Software. Now, Adam has had a very interesting career, or is having a very interesting career with stints in the army, and I believe in the world of archaeology. Correct me if I'm wrong, Adam, but
no, that's absolutely correct.
So my first question is obviously going to be, how did you navigate your way through these rather diverse areas into the beautiful world of sales operations?
Sales operations, the great thing about sales operations and everything that I've touched really is data. So that's really what strings together my career. I started off in academia, in archaeology, anthropology, actually. Turned that into a career in as a military intelligence analyst. It turns out making airplanes has data, building stores at Starbucks has data, and sales operations has data. And so I just kind of rode that analyst career, and here we are.
So the common theme has been data. I'd like to jump into one of those examples. I actually used to be a supervisor at Starbucks. So can you talk a little bit more about how Starbucks uses data to choose their store locations?
Oh gosh, yeah, absolutely. Everything and in between. So that's solely in the realm of real estate, and so they have, it's a function of global store development and store location and uh, store choosing the store location is has everything to do with choosing the right place, traffic, proximity to closest population density, how you could get materials in there, so the supply chain. And there's a whole lot of cost and benefit analysis that kind of goes into it. There's actually a standardized spreadsheet that they use to be able to do that. And if the costs justify the means, basically, they just green light and build that store.
So were you actually involved in that process, or was your role different?
In terms of serving the data, yes. Yeah. So to the point where, hey, could we choose this location to the left side of the street or the right side of the street? Which one is more lucrative, right? In the mornings, you want to be able to be in the middle of that kind of morning commute traffic. Exactly. And the opposite side of the street, not as much.
And then also at Boeing, I read on your LinkedIn profile about some data migrations that had significant cost savings. So data migrations, I believe, from different systems into one. Could you share more about what the problem was, what the solution was, and the impact that had on the business?
Yeah, at Boeing, we were having it's a classic, we're using too many systems to track different points of data. And so, and it's also, that industry is not quite as mature as kind of the leading technology industries, right? Who actually craft and code and make these programs. And so, they were using, legacy BI systems in separate places, and the end result of that is kind of like the old motion of push Excel reports. And so we wanted to get away from that and to kind of move that into one place, starting with supplier data, what you're ordering, the schedule of each airplane, what you're developing. So I was in test and evaluation, just as a kind of sidebar. These are airplanes that don't exist yet. These are new. They're testing it. They, very exciting models of airplanes. And so we don't even know sometimes what the pieces are. And so we also need supplier data, what items we're going to order. And then we have to throw that up against the test schedules and the build schedules. So the supply needs to be there on time so that you can build it on time. Once you build it, you have to test it on time. And then at the very end, you have to certify that one model of airplane. And so that all needs to be kind of in one place. And we started doing that there.
Got it. So we talked about data to select Starbucks store locations. We've talked about data in the airplane manufacturing process. How are you currently, and this is a big question, Adam, how are you currently using data at Tableau to help your sales reps be more effective?
To ensure that they are as successful as possible, we literally look into aspects of their business from end to end. So data is ruled, as sales experts, you start out with basically the whole thing leads to opportunity close. And we just kind of evaluate where those gaps are. So, for example, if you have a function that is sourcing opportunities, you can cover any of these things in any which way. There's no right coverage model. But let's say you have a BDR team that sources opportunities, and there's a gap between a customer that's interested and that says, "Hey, we would like to buy some Tableau," and then you hand it off to the sales rep to be able to close the deal. If you see that there's a gap there, we can see that using the data. So a specific example is that in Salesforce, the instance, there are tasks that you log, and if there's a specific sequence where if you hand off an opportunity, we are seeing that there's a lag between the BDR giving it to the sales rep and the sales rep calling into the customer. And so we just kind of implemented a cycle where, hey, take a look at this. We're seeing that it's been 2 weeks since you followed up. And, we've seen in the data that if you follow up within 2 weeks, you will have an opportunity. If you do not, that goes away. So you're throwing away all the work that the BDRs have done if you don't follow it up. And it's all driven by this data. We'd like to turn it over to within 1 week if we can.
Mm-hmm. So awesome, a very specific example of how you guys can use data to make salespeople more effective. Can we just zoom out a little bit and understand the structure of the sales ops function at Tableau, just to give people a bit more context to your role at the moment?
Yeah, so we have different flavors of account executives. So the highest strategic levels are actually, a finite account set that are deeply embedded and kind of know the strategic and data journey of their accounts. And so think of the Apples and the Googles and the Amazons of the world. And so those are highly strategic, highly involved, with basically the AE acting as quarterback. They have just a crew of resources to be able to help their customers just be successful and implement and deploy Tableau at scale at an enterprise level. You have other kind of flavors where it just scales down depending on the customer. So at the very bottom level is our SMB team that is just basically just looking for opportunities, either calling in, and in other cases, there's just companies that say, "Hey, we would like to buy some Tableau," and here we are.
And then your sales ops function is supporting all of those, like both types of sales teams.
Correct. At our level, we check the metrics. We have different analysts that kind of support kind of the commercial team, the enterprise team, and then all the verticals in between. We have certain metrics, pipeline coverage, forecast accuracy, linearity, that kind of show us and tell us how things are doing in each of those businesses.
Got it. Now, what has been a focus for you in sales ops since the start of 2021?
Well, I have been fortunate enough to support directly the public sector business. This is very interesting because in both 2020 and 2021, we have had the privilege or I guess advantage of having kind of COVID-related opportunities last year. And now in the States, at least, we have kind of our president's stimulus plan, that kind of infrastructure stimulus plan that really is affecting our business. And so we're really tracking that. A lot of these things we're looking for customer growth and success. And so we're really evaluating on, hey, what is the stickiness? How good is our product when addressing kind of COVID needs? Is this a 1-year thing, or is this going to last long term? Same thing for the infrastructure plans. If you're a company that builds bridges or roads, I know that you're going to get funding in the public sector to be able to purchase technology and what have you to execute on whatever construction you need to do. But we would like to really realize that value that we bring so that that will stay long term. And so we're kind of addressing whether or not that is going to be a short term or long term opportunity for us.
Got it. Yeah, that's super interesting, right? Like, this revenue coming in, whether it's from COVID or the infrastructure bill, will these opportunities persist or will they go away once the funding has been removed? Makes total sense. Could you share, I would like to dig into another example similar to the one that you shared with the handoff between the BDR and the sales rep about how you guys are using data to improve things. Is there another example you can share of how you have looked at the data in the sales process and then tweaked something to change the result?
Actually, yeah, something that we do on a weekly basis is pipeline coverage, and so essentially, and it's nothing that we tweak necessarily. It becomes a conversation with the VP, right? And we have these things to be able to kind of raise that flag. So the specific example would be pipeline coverage, and at an aggregate level, for example, the public sector team has a really good pipeline coverage ratio. So something like if you have uh, two times the opportunity. I'm just rounding out the number here. If you have two times the opportunities based on what you have left in the quota that you have to meet, um, that's a really healthy coverage for your pipe. But when you drill down at a district level, you're seeing pockets where pipeline is very, very strong, and then pockets where pipeline is at 1x. So when I see that, it's a really huge flag because for the remainder of that quarter, you really have to close and win the rest of your opportunities to even meet your quota. And so at that point, we'll find these red flags, and we'll have a conversation with the VP and kind of, hey, we need to right the ship. We kind of, it's kind of steering away. What can we do? What can we do to help to be able to steer this the correct way? Is it spiffs? Is it some sort of incentive? And we're there to help. It's not anything that kind of slaps anybody's hand, right? Sometimes it's felt that way, but yeah, it's just to raise that flag and ensure that we meet kind of the goals that we've set for the start of the year.
So what we're seeing here really is a combination of the two core skill sets of a sales ops hard. Starbucks mug, beautiful. The two core skill sets, they're the hard and the soft skills, right? So actually digging into the data, realizing that in this specific area, pipeline coverage is significantly less than 2, therefore there's a problem. Then the soft skills, which is where you're going to the VP or the rep and not saying, what's going on over here, but saying, how can we help you improve pipeline coverage so that we are all more likely to hit the quota? Just a clarification question. So is that a meeting that you have with once per week with all of the VPs, and then you'll be diving into different areas or looking at pipeline coverage with them?
Yes. If there is they're together in one meeting, and so we kind of see that at an aggregate level. If there's anything specific to the business, the district of the RDs that kind of support it, we'll call that out at that time.
Yeah, that's nice. Do you have any more? And I'm pushing you for another here. Any more examples of using data for improving the sales process?
Yeah, a really fun one for me is kind of forecasting. When you say you're going to do, let's just $20 million for the quarter, do you really mean that? So there's a couple of things there. Forecast accuracy. How close are you? And it depends on which week you are at the end of the quarter. If you give me the right number at the end of the quarter, that's not as fruitful as week 5 or week 10, for example. And then one of the things that go into it is our historical close rates, our historical linearity. So linearity is great. Just very quickly, it's a very, very highly predictive way to kind of look at your business. Because if everything is hitting at 33% in month one, 33% in month 2, and 33% in month 3, that is a super predictable business. If your quota is 15 million and you do 5 in each month, you're good to go. And so that's one of the things that we kind of throw that up against. So I'll give you an example. If let's say second quarter is at 25, 50 last year, and we need 15 million. And we did 5 million in the first quarter. We are tracking ahead of our linearity, and we're doing a really, really good job to continue that. Now, if that trends the same way, you can kind of predict, well, geez, we're gonna do about 20 million based on the initial numbers, right? And it's not always going to do that, but it's a really good way to predict things. And so we have conversations about that, especially in week 10, where we kind of see the first 2 months, and we're trying to find out where we land that third month. And if I can just say, well, it looks like we have this X amount of business left. And last year we did 50% of the business. Then we can predict that we will land ahead of our quota.
I kind of feel like you could go on all afternoon giving specific examples of data in the sales process. So we will stop there. My final question for you, Adam, is who in the world of sales ops would you most like to take for lunch?
Oh, my leader's leader, it would be Brian Selby. So he leads our whole organization at a global level, who just does it with such humility. And the secret, I don't know his secret. I just want to know, because he does it as though he were invisible. Things are running. And it's just like, I know he has such a huge impact, right? And but he does it in such a way that everything just seems less stressful. It's very calm, and it's just magic.
Brian Selby, is he the leader of the sales function or the leader of Tableau?
Ops. Tableau sales operations. Yes,
amazing.
He's really cemented kind of sales operations as a craft.
We will tag Brian in this, and we may even ask him to come on.
Absolutely.
Adam, thank you so much for being so clear and sharing the very specific examples. I'm now going to hand over to my delightful co-host, who I believe has the more specific sales ops questions to dig into.
Thanks, Tom. Yes, so thanks again, Adam. It was really, really interesting listening to and loved all those examples. And I just wanted to maybe pull back a bit to start with and think bigger picture. But your key focus, as you said, for your career is being sort of data driven and following where the data goes. And I just wondered, both on an organizational level and then a personal level, what would your advice be for how do you become data driven?
Just to be completely, personal, I got lucky. I started out as a military intelligence analyst, and this whole thing about BI was just kind of getting foot, and then Tableau just really took it to the forefront, and then I was lucky enough to be part of the organization. So as far as being data driven, you really have to kind of incorporate that as your core. So things that I say is, no matter what I do, and you've kind of seen my history, it's in different industries. But what strings them together, like I said, is that data piece. And everything is data. I could be selling wine, of different kinds in different regions, and that would be my business, and I would still be thinking about data. It is a core pillar. And so something that I would give, advice to others if you're doing this is just take that and just incorporate that into your life. It's like, changing a lifestyle for better and healthy living.
Thanks. And how about as an organization? Because I think lots of people, certainly people in the operations world, want to be data driven. Not necessarily all organizations are so key, and potentially dealing with that friction. So what are the marks that an organization is clearly set up for success there?
Yeah. The biggest thing is the culture. And so you can kind of tell that with kind of the appetite. In some cases, a lot of organizations are ready for change, and they're just banging at your door to just change that. And so one of the things I think about is your culture. Make sure that you have that, and you have key people that are kind of evangelists of data, and then a community. And so bring everybody else into the fold. And one of the things that has happened, I've experienced at Tableau, is it really reduces that waterline. Data isn't just held by a few people, it's held by all of the employees. And so that's really key, is that culture. So it's one of the things that our former CEO really hammers. We still say that it's you have to have that community, and then you have to have that support. So not everybody knows everything. I don't know everything, and so you don't be afraid to ask for help. Hey, does anybody know how to do XYZ in Tableau? I want to show this kind of data point. And there'll be 3 or 4 people that's ready to jump in and say, this is how you do it. And so it becomes this community, kind of takes a village kind of motion.
Great. And the other thing I was thinking, so I've done a lot of work on sort of reporting and essentially trying to make value out of data for a number of customers of ours. And there's always lots of positives, but there can often be things that get in the way of full delivering of value. I wonder what some of the key roadblocks that you sort of see for that, to being able to really get the value out of your data.
To really get the value out of your data, the biggest thing is, at least from a customer's perspective, is just know where they are, know their pain points, know what they're looking for. For example, if somebody is really struggling, and one of the things that we don't have is telemetry. Really, we value customer data, and so we don't have built-in kind of feedback on those things. And so, it really is just an understanding of the customer's journey, right? Where they are, their maturity, and just deeply, deeply knowing how you can help them succeed in where they want to go with that data. So that's the biggest, that's the kind of the hardest thing to do that, because we have kind of these blueprints on and best practices on what we have, right? We kind of have this library of knowledge. This is what you should do. This is what a graph should look like. This is what it, what will tell you. But really, understanding customer is one of the key things for success there.
Okay, thanks. And I guess obviously your platform allows the unification from multiple sources that helps, because obviously, as you mentioned at Boeing, data unification is a massive piece. I mean, like if it's all siloed away, very hard to do that kind of cross analysis. The other piece that I often encounter as well is data quality. We're increasing the amounts of data, and therefore just the increasing amounts of clutter that we're going to find in our data. Have you got any things that you've sort of experienced with sort of helping solve some of that problem? How do you deal with those challenges?
Yeah, a couple of ways. First of all, I'm going to plug in Tableau Prep. That's the best way to do it. But to be honest, you're looking at this dirty data, and one thing that you do is, do you want to perfect that data? So there are 2 kind of camps here at Tableau. We just kind of deal with it, and we know that there is that, but you can have custom calculations, for example, that kind of clean that up and change that meaning. One of the trickiest things, an example at Starbucks, would be changing the meaning of the field, right? And so in 2020, field Y means revenue, and now it means something else, right? Profit, for example. And so looking back historically, you can either change all those values back in all your historical tables to make that line up, or you can just kind of be agile and figure that out. And you're going to be frustrated. So they're going to be, and these scenarios again range. And so one of the things that I could say is it's going to be frustrating. And just be calm and ensure that the data represent the data as best as you can. That it's clean once you've cleaned it up, and so try not to get wrapped up in how that was created. And when you're presenting or something like that, just know that that is the true form expression of that data.
Great, and I often think it's helpful to say, to get value out of data, you don't need to be 100% perfect. Actually, 85% or whatever. There's plenty of intelligence. There's we're not plugging this into a computer who's like firing people or hiring. There's a step in between those big decisions,
right?
Getting
exactly.
made with some human intuition that can be passed over it. So,
and as long as you can defend that that data point or something, you should be okay. people are understanding on if you can construct kind of the meaning of that data. It's just not inefficient. It's not efficient to go back through all of history and change all the data points, for example, just to clean that up. And the business value out of that is not as much as though, as if you were just constructing insights out of the data that you do have.
So just one last thing that was really interesting from your conversation earlier with Tom was around linearity and just how you use that in your forecasting. And I think probably a scenario many people are familiar with yes, the certain ramp up to the end of the month, end of the quarter, where suddenly deals come in. How far do you mind sharing a little bit about how you sort of look to build your model, how far back you go, how you might sort of aggregate over different periods to try and understand what you think your linearity is?
Yeah, as an analyst, you basically look at all the variables in different ways, and then there becomes kind of this art where you judge, where you find out you just make a call at the end of the day. And so, for example, last year was a very off year, right? And to your point, it looks like in many cases, linearity, they look like hockey sticks, where it hits at the last month or last quarter. We know that, and so to answer your question, I look at it based on last year and see how much, because the recent past is a really good proxy for what's going to come. I evaluate it in the last 3 years, and then kind of make a call on that. So just to remove some of that variability. Anything older than that would be, I think it depends on how fast your business is changing. If you have a hyper growth business, that is a very different business compared to 3 years ago. I typically don't look back further than 3 years.
That's really helpful. Thanks. That's brilliant.
All right. And with that, Adam, again, thank you for sharing as much as you have on the show. If you're listening, I hope you enjoyed the new structure with the classic sales ops interview and then the more detailed, specific questions from Alex. Give us some feedback if you have any thoughts. But Adam, I want to thank you again for coming on, being so honest, being so open with what you're doing at the moment. It was a real pleasure having you on.
Thank you so much for having me.